Hey, everybody, and welcome to As the World Works, Take Two, with legendary director, great friend of mine, Michael Preece. If you want to hear more details about his background and the first conversation we had, we covered a lot of ground on his story, starting as a script supervisor in the 50s, traversing to directing in the 70s with Dallas, Walker, Texas Ranger, where we met, and you can't even cover the breadth of experience that this gentleman has in the world of filmmaking. So tonight we're doing take two, and we're gonna start off by setting the record straight of a story we were ending with last time about when he was a script supervisor. Michael worked on The Old Man and the Sea and a bunch of other movies back in the day, but he was still telling a story about rum and coke. So, Michael, do you want to pick up there and tell us what really happened?
Yeah, what happened was they had needed process plates shot for the interiors back at the studio at Culver City. So they sent me down there. I mean, they were filming in Cuba, in Havana. And all I did was go out on this barge, really, and write down what they were filming, Foggy Day or whatever. Anyway, so one evening, I had only been there a couple of days, and I went into the bar, and there were two old guys sitting at the bar. I've told this story a little bit, and they said, "What are you doing here?" And I told them I was on the second unit and what I was doing. They said, "Oh, good. Buy him a drink." And so I had a Cuba Libre, and and then I had another one, and I started to feel sick because I was a kid. I was 21 years old or something, 22 maybe. So what I failed to tell you in the first time was the two old guys were Spencer Tracy and Ernest Hemingway.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you're 21 and 22, they were old then. And they, you know, I knew Spencer Tracy was a famous actor, but Hemingway, I hadn't read that much of his work.
Well, that's inspiring.
It's kind of more impressive today if you're over 60, I think, or whatever, who those two guys were.
First, I want to give a cheers to you because you just talked about the rum and coke, but wine isn't bad, right?
So, well, that's about it, and a little beer. I've given up the rum and coke.
Cheers to that. It is Friday night, and weather's changing. It's fall. It's beautiful. You have so many stories to tell, Michael. One of the things, let's talk about a couple of things with Walker, Texas Ranger. I remember a show that one of the episodes we did was the lynching. Another episode where I got a conscience.
Oh, good.
Guy, I remember that now. Yeah. Remember with the guy that was kind of the you know, slow kid in the town, and people wanted to lynch him because they thought he was, you know, had raped a girl or something like that. So I let my buddies come in, and then I just got a conscience, but I beat him up.
Yeah.
At the end of it, though, we blew up a house that we were, you know, Clarence and Chuck and I were in and trying to find the guys, and all of a sudden we got out just in time and the house blew up. Do you like going things that go boom?
I love blowing up houses. There was a time in Dallas when around Dallas, you could blow up. People were going to tear their house down to build a new one, build a better house, and they would say, you know, you can film our house and blow it up, and then clean off the area, and we'll put our new house there. But there was this one house which was really a really nice house, and they wanted to have their house blown up so they could do the same thing, rebuild it. And so we went there, and the house was all concrete. So a lot of it was anyway. So they said, you know, we can't use normal explosives. We have to use dynamite. And I said, well, we've got Chuck Norris and Clarence and some other actors pretty close by. It's going to blow up the whole block. And they said, no, we can control it. So actually we dynamited a house, and there were pieces of rock flying for 100 feet in every direction. And, but we did that quite a few times, burn houses for just, for the show, and the people benefited. They didn't have to hire a construction crew.
You guys just went and took care of business. When the bricks were flying, was it in a neighborhood where?
Yeah, it was like in Highland Park or someplace. I mean, it was a nice house. It wasn't, in a cheap neighborhood. This was it was a very nice house, and they had set up a camera in a little shed up on the front lawn that we had took a picture like every, I don't know how often, every day, maybe one picture, and they were going through the whole construction thing. So they would show the house before, and then eventually you could make a little movie out of it. It's kind of cool idea.
It's very cool. What you let's talk about some of the funny stories too. Besides blowing stuff up.
Yeah.
What are some of the funny moments you remember?
I thought about one. We were down in Louisiana filming an episode, and I had a cousin who lived there, and I had not seen her since I was maybe 8 or 10 years old. But somehow she saw that we were filming there, got word to me, and I said, "Oh, come out to the set." So her name was Noreen or something like that. Anyway, she comes to the set, and here's this older woman who had only known me as 10 years old. And so she's watching this film. I got her a chair and in front of the monitor, and she's watching it. And she came back, and I went up and talked to Chuck, and we did a scene. And she said, "You know what's amazing?" She said, "You tell Chuck what to do, Chuck Norris what to do, and he does it." And she was shocked because all she could remember was I was a 10-year-old little kid playing baseball, and now I'm telling Chuck what to do.
That's got to be like a two people in the world that can actually do that.
Yeah, because Chuck was the boss. I'm not saying that, but if I'd tell him to walk up to this door and go inside, he would do it. And that's what I think she was talking about.
Yeah, the crazy thing was my first time on set was seeing like 3 Chucks, like the stunt guys, right? I saw 2 or 3 Chucks walking around.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we always had one. We had one for riding a horse, one for driving a car, one for, we had, the fight guy was the one that looked just like him. Yeah. It was amazing. He had his hair cut. They had similar hair, and so they, and he lived in Oregon, and they would have to fly him out a day before every time we had a fight. And so he was there sometimes twice a week because he owned a karate studio or a martial arts studio in somewhere, maybe Portland, and they would, and he had to, stop his classes or whatever and fly to Dallas and do the fight, and then he'd get back on a plane that night or something.
And Chuck sang the theme song, right?
Yeah, he did. Yes. He was scared. I think that was the biggest thing because he talked about it a lot. He said, because he's not a singer, and but they had a guy train him, get him in tune. I thought he did a good job. It's very nice.
No, it's iconic song now. You know when it's coming on.
Yeah.
So what are some other, you were talking about the early days. Those were, did you have any funny moments back then? And what are some of the big disastrous moments, like where you had to reshoot a whole film or a day of retakes because of, natural disasters or whatever?
Oh, well, I was doing a Bionic Woman in Las Vegas, and I guess that's about as close as I ever came from getting fired. Maybe others I didn't know about it, but we were filming in the lounge area or something, and suddenly some curtains caught on fire. Nothing to do with us, in another area. So they said everybody had to evacuate the hotel. Now we're in the middle of the filming, and so we have to get all the equipment and move it out. And they said, they would check and put whatever if there was a fire. And all of a sudden, now it was 5 o'clock in the evening, and the crowds were coming into the casino. And now we can't shoot that scene in that area where we could from, say, 11 to 4 in the afternoon. So it was that kind of little disaster. What do you do? Do you not? So they said, well, we're now behind schedule. And the word came in, well, I hear they're going to replace you because you're behind schedule. I said, no, we'll find a way. I've been on movies where an actor actually got sick and was taken to the hospital in the middle of a scene, and we had to come back, figure out a way to shoot everything except his close-up. And that those things have happened to me a few times.
The Mutiny on the Bounty, who was the director?
Well, it was Sir Carol Reed, and then when they fired him, they got in Louis Milestone, he was famous for a movie called All Quiet on the Western Front, which was an anti-war film back in 1939. Yeah.
Interesting. The thing is about, you're talking about the last time we talked, that it was 400 days or 300 something.
Oh yeah, we were way beyond schedule.
You're talking about 1 or 2 days. You're going to get fired on Bionic Woman.
Yeah. Well, not even, it was like 4 hours behind schedule.
A year. This is like 5 minutes. What about what about crew? Who are some of your you talk about leading men and women and the famous actors, but those people are the ones that are doing the grunt work and you'd never see. Bob Horn, you worked with Bob on
Bob Horn is one of my favorite people in the whole world. He had a lot of people don't know, he had a very quick sense of humor, and we had a lot of fun making fun of other people mostly, but
he was a camera guy.
Had a cruel humor. Yeah, Bob was. In fact, I have a little box that he was also a. What did he switch drinks?
Hydration with Topo Chico.
Yeah, he was a carpenter or a cabinet maker, and he made me a little jewelry box, and it said "From Bob Horn," personalized to me, and I've kept it all these years. And
he was always the camera guy, right?
Well,
he was
on Dallas, he was an assistant cameraman. Then he became an operator during I'm not sure what, but mostly in Texas or in Dallas. And then on Walker, he operated for a while. Then he would shoot second units, and he was very good. I mean, he's a wonderful guy, aside from being an excellent cameraman. We had several. We had a German guy, Carl Cases, Carly, we called him, and he was very artistic, and his wife was the art director. So it was like a family situation often.
Back when you were starting, the production had to be ginormous, right? You had so many people behind the camera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Compared to today, do you remember that transition from film to video and walking on a set and saying, there's like,
where is everybody?
Yeah.
You still need makeup people, and you still need some light. I mean, I know this takes care of a lot of it. A light bulb will light with the new cameras and video, but still, you know, the other day I was driving on the Coast Highway and I saw a movie company. They had their normal trucks, but they must have had 15 in a row of dressing rooms, because now with the COVID, you can't have people in the same dressing room. So they had these little, I don't know what, they're trailers basically. They're wonderful. And all these were lined up. I said, that must be a huge movie. or at least they have a lot of trailers. But then the equipment, they didn't, they had like one 40-footer and well, we used to have a camera truck, a sound truck. Everybody had their own trucks. And we call it the circus when we arrive on a set. I know, you know, very few people here are back to work, but they're getting back. My son is a driver captain, and he starts a new show, or the show he did last year on October 1st. So they're going back. I don't know what the restrictions are. I know they test him every day. He gets that thing put in his nose. So, but I don't know how, you know, you transport people in a van. I don't know. It must be very complicated.
I was thinking about all the people that go to LA for a break, and how many people must just sort of, that's a double whammy, right? When you're trying to make it, and then you're trying to make it. And even successful talent is sort of stuck in this weird place right now.
Right.
Have you seen that before? Did you, so my dad, as an example, grew up in the projects in Ohio, in a cinder block government housing with 7 siblings and a single mom, basically. And they had to wait they were on a wait list to get in there. And he remembers when polio came through, and everybody was quarantined for quite a while. They couldn't get out. And they were in the projects trying to figure out how to.
That must have been around 1946 or so, 48.
Yeah.
I think your dad and I are about the same age, aren't we?
He's 88 this year.
Well, he's a little older than I am.
Born in 32. You're 36?
Yeah.
So this isn't the first time this has happened, is my point. And people, when we've made it through it. And everybody's so fatigued, I think, right now.
Yeah.
With what,
well, you know, driving around our neighborhood down San Vicente Boulevard in the morning, there are lines waiting to get in to buy coffee. And I'm not a big coffee drinker, but I can't imagine waiting for 15 minutes to get a cup of coffee in a styrofoam cup or a paper cup that you could actually at home get a French press and make your own coffee. I really, I understand having coffee and sitting down at a table in a restaurant or outdoors and having a nice cup of coffee, but I don't get just getting it and getting in your car and driving home. Why not make it at home? I mean, it's not like making a meal.
It's a double addiction, right? You're addicted to the place and to the caffeine. So I'm going to spend $5 on a cup of coffee and wait 15.
Well, I understand sitting at Starbucks with your computer and writing your life story. That I kind of admire.
Have you done that? Have you sat?
No, but I've watched it done. There are guys who go there and they get, you know, a large coffee and sit there for 7 hours writing.
What's your favorite food? Random.
Well, I'm more simple than people. I like Italian food. Basically, I mean, I like spaghetti. I like spaghetti and with tomato sauce on it. I mean, and your dad, you remember this? Your dad, we went to a place and he put some sort of fish. I think it was, I can't remember what the fish was, it wasn't lobster, but it was fish into the pasta. And you and I and your dad, we had it one night. It was really good.
Pescatora at Ferrari's.
Yeah.
So good.
What was the fish he put into the?
Oh, it had a variety. I think it had all the shellfish, shrimp, and redfish and things like that. Yeah. My favorite restaurant, Italian restaurant, is down the street from you.
What's?
I don't know if it's still there, but it's called Toscana. It's called Toscana.
Oh yeah. Well, I know you mentioned Al Bernet's restaurant. I like it there.
It's a good piece of meat.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, Al's fantastic.
He worked on an episode of Walker. We shot at his restaurant, and I think we have found a dead body in front of his restaurant, and we could see that. See it on the restaurant, and he signed a piece of paper and said it was okay. And he said his business tripled once that episode aired in Dallas. And everybody wanted to go to the place where. And I think Al was the dead body or something to do with that. I forget.
He came to life. That place has gotten more traction since the show. I promise you, I didn't slow down. It's really good.
Yeah, I got one football story. I just
talking about football.
Talking about football.
Jim Brown.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, this friend of mine, Tim Reitman, who played for the Chicago Bears, and he came down to Dallas and played a part, but I said, you're so tall and big and good looking. I don't want you to do anything. Don't talk to Chuck or anything, because just sit behind the desk. The fight starts, and he likes to beat up big guys, but he doesn't want to stand next to you. And we were having lunch the first day. Excuse me for a moment. And he was sitting with a lot of the Dallas crew, and he said, "What's the worst defeat you've ever had in football?" And they said, "We lost to the Chicago Bears 44-0. And he said, "Well, I scored 2 touchdowns in that game."
Around a bunch of Cowboys.
All Dallas crew. Yeah. But anyway, he's a nice guy. So he's standing he and I are talking, standing in the middle of the stage, and here comes Chuck walking, and I split. I said, "Oh my God, what's going to happen?" So Chuck walks up to Tim Reitman, and Tim ducks. He squats, bends his knees, and starts talking to Chuck. Well, Chuck likes him, so they talk for not 1 minute, but on and on and on. And poor Tim is trying to look Chuck in the eye.
How tall is he now?
This guy's 6'4", Tim, and Chuck,
big guy.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Chuck is not that tall, and so
he's squatting.
So I saw this happening. I went up to Chuck and I said, "Chuck, I got to talk to you for a moment." And we walked away. Poor Tim, he was about to collapse from standing.
How'd the scene go?
Position. Try it sometime. Just.
Oh, I know. He's on the squat.
His knees were wobbling and everything.
You can't. If Chuck Norris is there, you're gonna. How was the scene?
Well, we love Chuck, though. He was
such a
guy.
good.
He is a good guy, actually.
He sure is. Let's talk about. Yeah, you were talking about disasters. What about pilots? That you mentioned one. Not really a pilot. You were working on a show before Dallas that you thought had legs. Did you ever work on a pilot?
Yeah, I did. I did one. I don't know. I mentioned it before that Dick Van Dyke was a comedy series, and Dick Van Dyke was going to star in it. And then we rehearsed. Fred Silverman, who had been president of the network, was producing it. So we rehearsed with Dick Van Dyke for about 5 days, And apparently on Friday night or Saturday night, we were going to start shooting Monday morning. Dick decided he didn't want to do it. And so he quit. So we're without a leading man if we're going to do this, or just sack the whole project. But it was a funny pilot. And so we talked about getting other people. I forget who all they were. And I said, well, I just worked with Tim Conway, and he would be equally as good. So they said, how do we get to him? And I said, I don't know. Let me take a wild shot. So I called Tim, because I knew him well enough. And I said, would you be interested? He said, well, let me see the script. So I said, where should we meet? And he said, well, do you know where Ventura Boulevard and Sepulveda is? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, there's a McDonald's there. So I go into McDonald's. It's on I think a Sunday night. And so we sat down, had a hamburger or something, and he read the script. He said, yeah, I'll do it. So I went back. This is all like pre-cell phone, so you have to go back home or whatever. And I called Fred Silverman, and I said, how about Tim Conway? He said, great. So instead of starting shooting Monday, we started Tuesday. Everybody else had been cast, and we were ready we had a crew and everything. So that was quite a thing. We shot the pilot. It turned out, I thought, very good. I have a letter, I think I have a couple of these, from the president of CBS saying, we love the pilot, but we're going a different way this season. And so they weren't going into comedy.
Yeah, you mentioned that part last time. Do you think it would be timely for it now, knowing what you know about it?
Well, yeah, it was about, here was one of the problems. It was about a guy who worked in a sporting goods store as a salesman, Tim Conway, or Dick Van Dyke. And so, and all of his problems with his family. And Tim did some very good stuff. He was demonstrating a walking, a treadmill, and he did a whole thing where he went backwards over it and crashed through volleyballs, and they said all that kind of cheap comedy. Mm-hmm. But Fred Silverman said, he said he was driving to work one day. This is again filmed at MGM. And he was going down Coldwater Canyon. He said, I found the perfect house for you guys. So I said, well, yeah, it's on Coldwater Canyon, right down in, yeah, he said, right in Beverly Hills. Well, I said, this guy is a salesman at a sporting goods store. He's not the owner or anything else. That house, even then, was probably $5 million. And I said, where did this guy? I said, we need to find a house in Culver City, or somewhere where we can, where a guy who's a salesman could afford to live.
You guys have done really a lot of ball.
Fred wasn't quite up to, how people really live. He thought
everybody lives like this.
Well, everybody lives in a house with we wanted a house with a picket fence, and he found one.
Did you ever meet Frank Sinatra?
Yeah.
Yeah?
What?
Did you ever meet Frank Sinatra?
Yes, I did. He came on the set of a movie called Mortuary, which I was doing with, I think I mentioned that before, Marlon Brando and Yul Brynner. And he came to the set, and he knew Brando from that movie, and I was in Brando's area, dressing room, and Yul Brynner, they sit outside their dressing room. This is on stage, and somebody had brought Frank Sinatra's chair over, which was soft leather with gold hinges and stuff like that. Beautiful. Director's chair kind of thing. And Yul Brynner had one equally as nice. Well, Brando, he'd sit anywhere on an apple box or And he didn't care. And he said, how long do you think this guy's going to stay? You know, he said, go find out. Brando used me a lot as a, you know, like his wife would call on the set phone and she'd say, I want to talk to Marlon. And because she could call his dressing room, but he wouldn't answer because he'd know who it was. So he would, and I would have to go over and say, Marlon, you know, your wife's on the phone. She wants to talk to you. Ask her what she wants. And I'd go back and I'd say, Anna, what do you want? And she'd say, tell him to get on the phone or he'll never see his son again. That kind of thing was fun. And I'm going back and I have to go back to Brando. It's only 20 feet or something. I'd say, your wife says, if you don't come to the phone, you'll never see your son again. Oh, God. Yeah. I had some experiences with on movie sets. One day, Tony Curtis arrived, and I was standing by the front door, or the door of the stage, and I said, "Hey, oh my God, look at you!" And he came in. He said, "Yeah, I'd like to talk to Brando." And I said, "Oh, okay, let me go get him." I went over and I said, "You know, there's Tony Curtis is here. He'd like to talk to you. Ask him what he wants." I said, oh, shit.
To talk to you. He's Tony Curtis.
Go over the same thing, you know. Well, he wants to know. He's busy right now. What's that? Well, I'd like him to, you know, it was some charity he wanted him to get involved in. Gee, yeah.
Did you? What music influenced you when you were, or even now, but when you were growing up?
I'm sorry. What was?
What music? What kind of?
I hate, let me think, you know, I grew up in West Los Angeles and we didn't, there was really old, Stan Kenton, people like that, Ray Anthony, with the big bands. Then I think Keely Smith, not Keely Smith, what was it? She and her husband played the guitar. I can't think of their name right now. But you know, I was still Frank Sinatra because my best friend growing up, his name was Guy McElwain, and he ended up representing Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. and those people as a advertising or publicity agent. And so I did like Sinatra a lot.
That's why you and my dad hit it off. He was a DJ right out of college.
Yeah.
Went to college on the GI Bill. And he was in the Air Force during Korea, stationed in outside San Diego, and he never was deployed, but he was a lifeguard working out on the beach. And then he after school he was a DJ for a jazz station, big band mainly, in Temple, Texas. So Dan Kenton, all those guys I know. I mean, that's what I grew up listening to. So what about now? I know Randy Newman, we talked about, it's your nephew.
Yeah, well, of course, he's my favorite singer in the whole world.
It's not because he's
I'm not a big fan of rap, but I like Eminem. I think he's a talented guy. Mostly I listen to 60s and 70s music on the radio if I'm driving, or listen to Comedy Central.
Did you like the Beach Boys, being a West Coast
guy? Yeah, I like them. I like the Bee Gees a lot. Bee Gees I still will play at dinner.
Saturday Night Fever.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Now I do, believe it or not, I turn on classical music a lot during the day. I have this Sonos system in the house, and you can have it in the background.
It goes great with white wine.
Yeah, or red.
Or red.
Depending on the time of day.
So let me ask you, we talked about Westerns last time, right? But I didn't get a chance to ask you your top 3 Westerns of all time.
Well, the ones I worked on or the ones I saw.
Let's break it up.
All right, the first,
3 and 3.
the ones I worked on, I thought were, I thought True Grit was a pretty darn good Western. I thought Will Penny with Charlton Heston was a well done small movie. I don't know if you know the movie Will
I
Penny.
do, and people should watch this because it is one of those rare finds that not many people know.
And the director, Tom Grice, I worked with on a few movies, and his son, John, played the boy in it, who had never acted. And then his son, John Grice, went on to become a fairly well-known actor for a while, and then a producer, I believe. But that was a good one. The 5-Card Stud, I don't think was a great Western, but it was fun to work on. We shot it in Durango, Mexico. And then I played a part in that too. I love that. I played Pete. I remember my name in the movie. And there was a very tough director on that, Henry Hathaway, who had done How the West Was Won, which was another good big Western. I only did 2 or 3 sections of it. I think they made 5. I did 2.5 sections. That's why I say 2 to 3. And but True Grit, because of John Wayne and Glenn Campbell, that was a pair.
What about the top 3 Westerns that you haven't worked on that just are?
Well, I guess I liked a movie called Red River with John Wayne and Montgomery Clift and people. There was a movie that I really liked. It wasn't really a Western. It was sort of a Western. Spencer Tracy and Lee Marvin, and it's about a train coming into a small town. Semi-Western, a modern, and there was a story about it that Spencer Tracy only had one arm in the movie, and Lee Marvin, in the first scene they were going to do together, had a match in his mouth, and Tracy said, "Don't use that match. It really makes it distracting." And Lee Marvin said, "Well, you only have one arm. You're trying, whoever's going to steal the scene. Am I going to steal it because I have a match in my mouth, or am I going to steal it because you're going to steal it because you only have one arm? And how are you going to do a fight?"
Oh, here's one. Here's an irony connection. So my very first, before I did film or TV and then film, I was doing commercials. I was kind of in commercial hell, right? Because it's like trying to break out of that, which was fantastic. The very first guy that cast me in that world in commercials a few years before we met was a guy named Gordon Willis Jr. And Gordon Willis Jr.'s dad is Gordo Sr., right? Who is a camera guy for all the Francis Ford Coppola films. So his son, Gordon Willis Jr., who's still a friend of mine for many years.
Oh, really? Huh.
He's living out there near you. He's been very successful commercials director, but he grew up around Brando and Pacino and those guys, being on the sets of all the films that his dad did. Did you know any of those guys?
I knew Gordon Willis pretty well. I first movie I did worked with Gordon Willis was The Paper Chase. We shot it in Toronto, and I'd been working with Lucian Ballard, cameraman, who used every light in the truck, and to all of a sudden go with Gordon Willis, and he was changing from a 40-watt light bulb to a 45 light bulb. I mean, it was really a different. And then we did another movie, Gordon, called 9/30/55, which is the anniversary of James Dean's death. It's hard to believe there's been 65 years since James Dean died. And most people still know the name James Dean. Anyway, and we're down in Conway, Arkansas. You know where that is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So one night we all went to dinner, and Gordon was a very nice guy, and it was a dry town, and he had snuck in a bottle of Gordon's gin, which is not the finest gin in the world, I guess. But anyway, and he was pouring it into his iced tea, and the waitress came up and busted him. Said, "You're not allowed to have alcohol in the restaurant." And he said, "What alcohol?" That kind of thing. Anyway, yes, I do know. I knew him, and he was a wonderful cameraman.
Yeah, I had the good fortune of working with his son. Who it's interesting talking about him being the first part of my journey, you being a big part of that, just the trajectory and proximity of folks I'm talking to next week. Interestingly enough, another person who lives down the street from you in Brentwood. Her name is Marky Costello. Her granddad was Lou Costello.
Oh, really? Oh, my God.
Yeah.
I grew up. That was that, Bud Abbott and Lou Costello. Yeah.
What happened to him?
No, Bud Abbott and Lou Costello were the.
What happened to Lou Costello? Well, his granddaughter is Marky. I lived in California for a little bit, and she managed me in the TV host world, and that's been her arena ever since as an agent and manager in that world. But you see how these things it's just crazy. But yeah, I grew up, watching all the comedies from back in the day. And my favorite actually this is what always got my dad, was watching the roasts that
Dean Martin did, or
Dean Martin and all those.
I love those. Yeah,
I still watch them.
I'll watch that and car chases. I love it whenever I see a car chase on television. They're usually in the daytime here, and in Los Angeles, they're big news. They'll be on every channel. They'll have a helicopter following some guy who's, had a fight with his girlfriend, and he's taking.
It's so weird you say that, because like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, there was one there. I don't know what happened, but it was 3 hours.
Oh,
the chase was with these two guys. It just went on and on.
Yesterday, Claudia and I are driving down some street, I don't know, and a car comes up right behind. She was driving, goes around her like at 60 miles an hour, and cuts back in front and goes swerving down the road. And I said, maybe we're in a car chase.
Did you look up?
And we'll be on TV, it'll be great. And I said, we can ram the guy from the behind, and
it wasn't a white Bronco, was it?
Not this time.
Not this time. Oh man.
When you said that, it reminded me of O.J. Simpson. He used to go to UCLA to work out a little bit. And he was older. He was an actor by this time. And I would be out there running the straightaways and walking the curves, or jogging the curves and sprinting, working out really hard. And all I ever saw O.J. Simpson do was stretch. He would sit on the lawn talking to guys and just, in the hurdle position and bend over and stretch. And he looked great. I didn't look that good, and I'm working out like crazy, and he did
discretion. Maybe that's the key.
Yeah.
Oh, I know one of the things. So you look back at the Golden Guild era, I think that's what you call it, of Hollywood. Is that right? Is that what you say? Golden Guild.
What do you call it?
The golden era, the golden.
Yeah. Well, for 1 second, when I got in the business, all I heard was it's not like the good old days. I was 19, and I'm working down in Georgia on a movie, and the camera operator, I remember him saying it. He said, "Oh God, the good old days were great." And that was in 1955, and then now I say, do people have the same fun as they did back then as we did? I had a lot of fun. I mean, pranks were common on sets, especially if you're a 19 or 20-year-old kid and you're just starting in the business. I was sent on errands that were so stupid that
like what?
I mean, they did horrible things to me, and I said, they still do that. Well, they can't, because you can't. You'll get in trouble. You can't say, if a pretty girl walks by, you can't say, even if you know her, you can't say, well, you look nice today. It seems really strange to me on movie sets. And they have meetings ahead of time of what not to say and what not. You can't look at people. I don't know. Anyway, it's interesting.
Time. My interest is because when I see it in playbacks or documentaries, it looks like they tried to film everything they could. You've talked about so many films you've worked on remotely, but it seems like back in the black and white film era and then sort of Technicolor, they tried to do as much as they could at the studio. It seemed like there was all, you always see like the sets crossing each other and the people all dressed in their characters, and they were going to one lot or the other. And was that true, or did they was it a balanced location? And
well, it's obviously much more expensive to shoot on location. I mean, for instance, stage 30 at MGM, they built an entire Bounty there, the whole ship, with water and everything for scenes, night scenes, and someday they had an enormous cyclone background of all blue skies and with some clouds, and the clouds were movable. I mean, it was elaborate, but it was still cheaper than shooting in Tahiti aboard a real ship. It was also that same stage, which at the time was the biggest stage in the world, I think, 30. We had a 4-up, a movie I was doing called Cimarron. Was Glenn Ford. I'll tell you a story about Glenn Ford. Anyway, he and Maria Schell, and we had the whole drive, the outside of the stage onto the stage, made up to look like with cactus covering buildings. I mean, that kind of stuff. The buildings, they were black, but they had lit the cactus and everything. And here came this stagecoach. I think a 4-up. I don't think it was a 6-up, but anyway, drove onto the stage into a camp. I mean, that's a big shot to do that. You normally would think, well, it'd be better to do it out at the real place. But somehow they figured it was cheaper to build this. I mean, it was an incredible set.
So what's your story about Ford?
Oh, no, Glenn Ford. Yeah, he was I was doing a movie with him. I forget what it was now. And he staggered his dialogue. He would speak, well, sort of like I do. He was imitating me. He would hem and haw a lot. And so the director, a guy named Anthony Mann, Tony Mann, said, cue him whenever he's up. And I said, okay. So I have the script there. It's easy for me. And I would hear him start stuttering and looking like he couldn't think of what he was going to say. So I would give him the line. And he'd say, no, I know the line. He said, I'm acting. So then,
I'm being Henry Ford.
well, the next time, there he is, and he's going, well, I don't know, and he's playing a part. And I don't know whether he's acting and he said, then he would stop and say, cue me, I don't know, give me the line, what is it? And so my line was, I can't tell whether you're acting or you don't know your dialogue, one of the two. And, so I'm not sure he liked me very much. He and Brando did not get along. I didn't work on the movie, but they did one in Japan, and they didn't get along at all. Glenn Ford and Marlon Brando.
Brando started Apocalypse Now on, I don't know if this happens to actors or fame or how that happens, or just like you mentioned last time, how you respect kind of off the rocker actors. But he started becoming a tough guy to work with.
Brando?
Yeah, Brando.
Very much so, I've heard. The movies I worked with him on, that's not very good English. I would not want to be the director. I think I said that before.
Yes.
But as a crew member, he was great. He was funny. And it was great to hang out with and talk about girls and that sort of thing. But he could be very difficult. And I think as he got older and he got very fat, and I thought he became what he thought very unattractive. And so he had to play those parts, like in Apocalypse Now, played that character. Was
Mutiny before or after On the Waterfront?
Oh, way after.
Okay.
Yeah. One day I saw him on stage, and they had to because of the long filming of Mutiny on the Bounty, his pants had to be let out because he would gain weight in his butt. And so you could see where they had let the material out. Have you ever seen that with some men where they see you can see where the threads were on the outside, and one day we were standing there having coffee and cookies. It was before craft service was so extensive, and I counted. He ate 22 vanilla cookies in a row without stopping.
He was more into the Bounty than the Mutiny.
Yeah. He really, I don't know. He was something. I guess he had more problems than I want to think about having.
What was the last thing you worked on?
Seventh Heaven, a television series.
Oh yeah.
I directed a whole bunch of those.
Jessica Biel came out of that, right? Jessica Biel was on that.
Yes, she was. She was fun because she had kind of left the series, and they said they were doing the last episode ever, and I was directing it, and so they asked her to be in it because she had become a bit of a movie star, or a movie star, not a bit of one. She didn't know me at all, and she came on and somebody introduced it, and I said, what this shot is, you just run up to the podium in the church. And she said, you have pretty legs, so I'm going to get the camera low so we can see you're running and you'll look good. And she said, and then I told her this was only the second show I'd ever directed. And so you had to bear with me because I really don't know what I'm doing. So any help I can get. She looked at me and she said, you're not a very good liar. She didn't believe that this was the second show I'd ever shot. Decent series. The lady producer, she ran a tight ship. It was a very well-run show, and people followed those kids right up through. They were practically born on the show and grew up acting in, as their life, living on a TV show. I'm sure they sit back now and watch the reruns and say, "My God, there I was. Wasn't I a cute little girl?" And now I'm 40 years
old. Collecting royalty checks.
Yeah.
from Friends, or there's a lot of shows back then where the royalties are not bad. I did get a check the other day from
Oh,
Walker.
oh, good. Yeah,
It was amazing.
yeah. It'll buy almost 2 cups of coffee, I'm
I
sure.
gotta save it up so that I can get in line at Starbucks and get my $2 or $3 cup.
Yeah, get 2 or 3 of them.
I gotta write my story. My life story. We're gonna do a part 3. I see this one day soon. Thank you, Michael, for coming
You're
in.
welcome. That was great fun. I have a bunch of stories I was going to tell, but anyway,
Give us the last one.
you got word for one Larry Hagman story?
Oh yeah.
You can cut some other stuff out. So I was doing Dallas, and Larry said, "Do you want to have lunch at this Chinese restaurant?" I said, "Sure." He said, "Okay," with walking distance from the studio, and Patrick was going to be there. So we get there, and there's like 8 of us, and they said, "Mike, you sit." Maybe they call me Michael. Anyway, they said, "You sit in the middle there because we want to hear your stories." And I said, "Okay." So they sent me there, and we all have lunch, and everybody's having their cocktails and lunch, and we're laughing and everything. And then suddenly, like an hour later, Larry looks at his watch and he said, "Oh my God, I got to get back." So he and the dialogue coach split. And then Patrick says, "Oh, me too, I got to go." Well, in about 45 seconds, everybody had left except me and the assistant director for the pay the bill. And that was their idea of humor. Larry and Patrick.
They literally left like that.
They stuck me with it. It was all planned ahead of time.
Did you call them out on it later?
Oh yeah. I got even with them.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You got so many stories.
Yeah.
Love you, brother. We'll do it
Okay.
again.
Thanks, Sam. Take
All
care.
right.
Say hi to Dad for me, please.
I will, for sure.
All right.
Take care. Bye. Bad day at Black Rock. Dances with Wolves.
Oh yeah.
Unforgiven. Films like that.
Unforgiven, I thought was one of the best Westerns I've ever. Yeah.
sense.